We're going to do some Q&A today, so glad to have you with us. So if you pre-submitted your questions when you registered, we've got those. We're also going to take some live Q&A, so start queuing up your questions.
We are the VanderSpa. We're located in Shady Shores, Texas, basically Dallas-Fort Worth, just a little bit north of the Metroplex. And we service and support the Vanderhall ownership community with three-wheeled gas-powered vehicles. We're glad that you're joining us tonight. We appreciate you investing the time to participate and learn more about your ownership journey. How many people that are in our viewership right now knew that there was a Vanderhall owners rally this past week in Northwest Arkansas? And how many of you were there with us? I'm curious. Maybe nobody. I'm looking at my moderators and they're like, I don't see any comments.
We have one said that they were aware of it, but they didn't go. Second one knew of it, couldn't make it.
Right. Well,
third and fourth, yep.
That's great.
Several knew about it.
We had a good time. We had 21 or 22 vehicles show up. Pretty good posse of people. 3 days of riding. One of those days, everybody got the glorious experience of about an hour and a half driving their Vanderhall in the pouring rain. So if that's never happened to you and you're a Vanderhall owner, if you become a more passionate driver and start spending more time on the road, it's going to happen to you at some point. So maybe pay attention to the kind of things that are getting posted here over the last several days on social media, as well as maybe even in the next week, about people sharing their experiences of what they felt in their vehicle when they were having to drive in the rain. I don't see any reason not to just jump right into questions. Do we have anybody who's got their hand raised with a question to start with? And who is it?
So we'll start with the first one that's live from Art. And he says, do you have any affiliates that does repairs in Southern California? So maybe we can talk about, we don't have any affiliates yet, but we do have some people that we can recommend. So what do you got to say about that?
Right. There is a company I'm going to draw a blank because I'm on camera. Temecula. There's a company called InnoKinetic in Temecula, California.
Trevor, you nailed it.
Trevor, I'm sure will speak up on that because Trevor's a client of theirs for sure. InnoKinetics, owned and operated by a gentleman by the name of Shanu. They are very familiar with the Vanderhall platform, and they can help with most of the concerns that you would have in that part of the country. They are probably one of the only places that I know of in all of California, much less Southern California.
That said, no matter where you are in the country, if you've got someone that's actually working on your machine or willing to work on your machine, we'd be interested in hearing about that. And we'd like to create would like to develop some affiliate connections. We're designing our systems so that we can actually deputize folks. And we haven't announced anything yet, but that's our intention. With the way we're using technology, we can transfer some of that knowledge so that it can be used by shops that you trust. So if you've got some, let us know.
Excellent.
Dan, let's see.
Dan who?
I just have Dan.
Okay.
So
hey, Dan.
Dan, if you want
to. We know a few Dans.
Yep. With the drive, he asked this. With aggressive driving on common roads, will the car likely understeer before the rear tires let loose in turns?
Wow. Okay.
So first of all, explain to me what understeer is, in case I might not know.
Okay. So understeer is the condition where you come into a turn hot and you turn your wheel. Let's say you're coming into a right-hand turn, you turn your wheels right and the car continues to push straight ahead. It doesn't respect the angle that you have the tires turned at. You're carrying too much speed. You've got too much brake. You've already got too much weight transfer to the front.
You're
Maybe there's
hydroplaning.
maybe there's debris or water on the road. Um, it is my opinion that Vanderhall suspension engineers purposefully designed understeer into the front of these vehicles, because if you had the ability, for instance, you cannot adjust caster or camber by making physical adjustments with shims or eccentrics or anything on the front end for alignment. Those are set positions in the front suspension. And so it is safer, frankly, for someone to experience understeer in a Vanderhall than it is for them to experience oversteer, because oversteer is almost irrecoverable because of how quick it happens, because of how light the rear end is. So understeer is definitely a risk. I don't know that I would say it's more or less of a risk, but if you go into a turn hot, it's probably going to push on you more than oversteering, depending on just the attitude that you're going into the turn. Now, you said aggressive driving on regular roads. Was that the phrase?
Common, yeah.
Common roads. I would say common roads have curbs and street signs and other cars and things like that. And I don't know that I would condone aggressive driving in those environments at all. The kind of roads that we were on in Northwest Arkansas were big, open, curvy, a little bit of shoulder, but no curbs, no guardrails. That's good and bad. You need to not overdrive your environment. It's just a caveat we should throw in there.
So if you're overdriving your environment in town, which I have done, what's likely to come unglued first?
Wow.
Cornering, for example.
Yeah, it's going to be cornering. These vehicles have anti-lock brakes on them, and the anti-lock brake system is pretty effective. And the tires maintain contact with the road pretty well as long as you're going straight. If you have steering angle induced at all and you really have to put on the brakes hard, because of ABS, the front tires are going to continue to roll and they're going to redirect the front end. And the back end, there's nothing to stop it from wanting to slide sideways. Because when you put the brakes on, you're unweighting the rear end of the car. And if you have any steering angle at all, you're inviting the rear end of the vehicle to go the opposite direction that you have the wheels turned. So you need to have the mindset of, I'm going to go into this thing, I'm going to turn the wheels to the right because that's the direction the road goes. But if you feel the rear end going to the left a little bit, you need to, what we call, open the wheel, straighten it back out a little bit to try to get the rear end to fall back in line with the front, and then try to bring steering angle back in so that you're not crossing over the opposite. In a right-hand turn, you're not crossing across the center line.
So if you're trained on slick roads, or you've had experience in a vehicle where it starts to fishtail, is there any difference in the correction in this car than a four-wheel car?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
Yeah. The rule of thumb is always point the front wheels where you want the car to go.
Good. Yep. So if we could dwell on this a little bit, in my experience, the corrections, making those corrections, opening that steering, caused larger than expected deviations. And so I got into an oscillation where I was swinging left and then swinging right, swinging left, and finally got all three wheels to stick again, and then had to steer back into my intended direction.
Right.
Kind of walk us through that.
I think that happens a lot. In these vehicles are three-wheeled go-karts, and almost no matter what speed you're going, a little bit of steering input makes a big difference in weight transfer. And because of that, the kind of counter steering, holy cow, I need to correct, that you may be used to from driving a heavy car with a lot of mass and closer to a 50-50 weight distribution, it's slower for the car to respond when the back half of the car weighs a lot, because that mass takes a minute to get moving in an opposite direction from the way it was going. So I think from driving full-size, larger, heavier cars, even in the snow or the rain or the ice when we go out and play in the ice on purpose. The the tendency that we have to correct when we feel a slide needs to be half as much in a Vanderhall because there's no weight back there. The rear end is actually going to respond pretty quickly to what you're doing with the front wheels. So this goes back to, in a perfect world, we would be able to create for the culture a centrally located or a regionally located autocross and invite people with their Vanderhalls to come to a big open mall parking lot where there's nothing to hit and set up cones and even have an area where we wet down the road so people can understand how does dynamic driving in my Vanderhall differ from dynamic driving in a 3,000 or 4,000 pound vehicle. Just it makes a difference. And you are really light and the back end is even lighter. So it whips around like a fish, literally like a fishtail with just a little bit of steering input. We have spoken to a few people who've had some significant loss of control events, and it's always a primary reaction was too big, and that sent them this way, and then they counter steered the other way, and it was too much and sent them the other way. So they just go from being out of control one direction to being out of control the other. So try not to let your anxiety get the best of you if you feel tires losing grip with the road, and be slow.
Small control input.
Small inputs.
Yeah.
Small inputs is the key.
And what should I do with my throttle if I'm at that point? If I can feel it coming, feel it starting to fishtail, losing grip,
Right.
or if I'm actually kind of biased one direction, like a lane change on the interstate, and I hit a bump or something, and I feel that back tire skip one direction, and I have to actually correct. What do I talk to me through what I do with the throttle?
Okay. I wish these had a stronger throttle spring in them because it's just really easy to, and some of you have probably noticed this, especially those of you that have Bad News Racing performance tunes where it increases the throttle sensitivity a little bit. Just your body bouncing around in the car can bump the throttle and pulse power to the front wheels. If you really have good control of your driving position, I want to talk about that too. If you have good control of your driving position, you're able to isolate your right leg and your right foot from the rest of your body. The rest of your body should be pinned in and anchored in the car so that you can be judicious with your application of brake and gas pedal.
So seat belts.
Seatbelts.
How do I frame, position my other foot?
Right, good question. So when we teach people on the racetrack, which is a hobby or pastime of mine, I instruct people in track driving in their street cars. And one of the first things we do is invite them to sit closer up on the steering wheel than they probably normally would in their street car when they're just driving relaxed. One of the things we do is ask them to sit up in the chair, put their shoulder blades against the back of the seat, stick their arms straight out, and then drop their wrist on top of the steering wheel. You want the steering wheel to be in the break of your wrist. Now, Vanderhalls have telescoping. People have varying torso length to leg length. So you need to play with that and figure out, in order to have your left leg fully extended and on the dead pedal, for those of you who don't know what that is, it's the elevated steel panels that are coming off the floorboard for those of you that have them. There are those of you that don't have. Early first generation Venice didn't have dead pedals. So your distance to the firewall floorboard is further. But the dead pedal is there not just to give your left foot a place to rest, it's there to give you the ability to exert muscle into the dead pedal, keep your hips pressed back in the seat so that your right leg can operate independently while the rest of this frame isn't moving around. So dead pedal engagement with your left leg with a little bit of a bent knee, keeping your hips pressed into the back of the seat, and then setting your wrist across the top of the steering wheel. That puts you close enough to the wheel that you've got good core control. All of you who are one-handed drivers need to lose that habit unless you're just really in 40-mile-an-hour rush hour traffic. If you're driving your Vanderhall in that aggressive manner that somebody else talked about a few minutes ago, you should be at 10-2 or 9-3 with both your hands and keep them there and use both arms to maintain control over the wheel. and how much angle you're putting into your steering.
So let's pivot to a next question. I think what I've got a couple comments on this because I'm a pilot and it's very similar, and I'll talk about that. But I'm going to give you this question, Troy, to think about.
Okay.
Is there easy ways? So we're going to talk about oil changes and gas caps coming up here.
Okay.
The questions are, is there an easy way to change the oil in a Carmel without a lift and just using ramps without making a mess on the frame? And then gas cap fix, how do we avoid the check engine light? So before we get there, let me just close out the topic of the driving with an analogy to flying an aircraft. I fly airplanes for fun and open cockpit airplanes and the enjoy driving Vanderhalls for the same reasons, an open cockpit experience on the ground. So pulling some G's and feeling the acceleration is great. So that's why some of the questions I had about that. If you can imagine pushing a shopping cart backwards, that's kind of what's happening when you're driving a Vanderhall or flying an airplane with the little wheel in the back. And so directional control is the main thing. And just like in the car, in an airplane, you can get that fishtail going, and you'll be dancing with your feet on the rudders. In the car, you're steering left and right. And so picking a point farther out ahead of you than you think will actually allow you to make smaller inputs. Even in an emergency, if you can keep from just looking at the dashboard, looking a little bit farther out and finding a target and then steer towards that target, it will minimize the amount of oscillations that you'll experience. If you do ground loop, in other words, if you do spin out, we call it a ground loop. Fortunately, the car is small enough that it's likely gonna pivot in place. And if there's a panic brake or something like that, they stay relatively flat to the ground unless you're off camber or you get tagged or something like that. But if you're doing this aggressive driving, please wear some safety gear. Helmets are always a great idea, and as you learned how, if you push your car to that limit. Additionally, with regard to the oscillations with the pedal that Troy was talking about, we call that pilot-induced oscillation. And a number of times I've had that happen in a car or in an airplane. And one of the things to do is just pull your foot off, take your hands off the controls, not the steering wheel in this case. But remove your foot from the gas pedal, just move it to the side and let it go, let it idle down, and you'll stop that. The issue is when you're trying to either you're getting bounced or the car is actually moving underneath you, just the inertia of your foot is going to be enough to cause that to happen. You'll feel that jerk. So pilot-induced oscillations, driver-induced oscillations. All right, let's talk about gas caps and what was the other one I mentioned? Let's start with gas caps first.
Okay.
It was oil changes.
Right. Okay. Fuel cap failures on Vanderhall factory fuel caps have been almost completely isolated to the core or the guts of the cap coming unbonded from the cosmetic domed black metal that mounts over the top of it. They are literally glued together inside with some sort of adhesive. And the adhesive was either not the right kind of adhesive, or it was applied under incorrect circumstance or whatever. And over time, with the sun coming out and beating down on that black cap, because black absorbs heat more than any color there is, the adhesive fails. And then one day you go to take your cap off and the top just spins and the core stays locked into the filler neck where you can't get the cap out.
Bad day if you're already low.
Yeah, if you're on reserve, then you suddenly have anxiety. So for people who have that happen or are in fear of that happening, the first thing to know is it is possible if you're a big enough, heavy enough person and you can get above the cap enough, you can put your body weight down on that and press down with all your force while you turn counterclockwise, and you can usually get the cap disengaged. Most of the caps that have had that failure are the two stud drops into place, turns 90 degrees, and starts to click immediately kind of cap.
You
And
might call
then,
those bayonet caps.
yeah, bayonet
Bayonet
style,
style.
drop in and twist, or drop in and engage. And then the last year and a half, almost concurrent with these secondary resource wiring harness cars, 23.5 and 24 models, Vanderhall had to shift to different filler necks because General Motors ran out of the filler necks that they used in all the Vanderhalls up to that time, and they migrated to one that requires a spiral thread, like a literal screw would have. And those are going to spin several times before they get down to snug and start to click. I haven't seen or heard about many failures on spiral caps. I think most of the failures have been on later model, right before they transition to spiral. So that's probably you late 21s and 22 model people who might specifically be concerned about, if you know you've got your original cap, it could come unglued inside. There are people out there who have condoned and even recommended sticking a flat blade screwdriver down the inner side of that thing, almost like you're shelling a crawfish, and prying the guts out of it, and then go in there and re-glue it and snap it back together, and it's good as new. Well,
don't do that while it's on the car.
yeah.
If you're going to attempt that.
Well, no, this is when it's upside down and you're
Right.
you've managed to get it off the car, but the two halves are still loose from each other. You would have to get in there and pry it out in kind of an uncomfortable, gee, am I going to break this kind of way to glue
Or
it.
stab through your
Or a
palm,
stab through
something
the
like that.
diaphragm, or suddenly.
We have a better solution,
Yeah.
and people are recommending it here in the comments.
Yeah, our Vander, we call it the Vander cap. It is a aftermarket fuel cap with a CNC machined black anodized top that we manufacture, and they are physically coupled inside, mechanically coupled. So there's no glue, no adhesive. Once it snaps together, it's held in with a circlip. It will not separate and just spin on the cap. But those caps that we have are only two stud drop in and twist 90 kind of caps right now. We don't yet have a replacement for the spiral, but we're working on it. We think we're hot on the trail. Probably will know the answers to that in the next week or two. And at that point, we'll be able to offer Vandercap replacements for both the twist lock and the spiral style.
Just a couple of notes on the caps. We start out with a short cap, and then where the grip was a little bit lower profile, and I think we've still got some of those. Then we changed to an extended reach. The extended reach is for our ladies that have longer fingernails, or guys that have stubby fingers, or a luggage rack or something that you've got like that to be able to handle it. So you can order those in the low profile or the extended reach.
Right. And I'm not positive. I'd be interested to know if people just want to voice their opinion on whether they would want to have a cap that's similar to the profile of the current factory caps, or if they would rather have something that stood up just a little bit taller so that when they do use a luggage rack, they've got more grip potential on the cap. Plus the Vandercap ER, which stands for extended reach, those are, gosh, they're probably half a pound heavier. They have nice heft to them. It impresses you when you take it off that this thing's pretty hefty. I don't want to leave this behind. When they're light duty and you set them aside, you forget about them. People come up to you at the pump and want to ask you 30 questions about your Vanderhall, and you hang up the pump and you get your receipt and you jump in your car and you drive away.
Or you set it on top of the back wheel.
Or you put it on top of the back tire and then you drive over it. So our recommendation, we've made it a dozen times on social media. The filling procedure for a Vanderhall is take your fuel cap off and put it in the driver's seat, upside down. You will know if you forgot to put your cap away, because you will sit on it getting in the vehicle.
Unless you have the long seat belts, and then you won't know the difference. You might.
Right. Yeah. You might think you're sitting on the long seatbelt receivers of a Carmel. Yeah. Okay, so that pretty much covers fuel caps, I think.
Trevor says he prefers the low profile look.
Uh-huh.
And while we're on tanks, Terry Sapko also asks, you mentioned reserve. Is there
Mm-hmm.
actually a reserve in the tank, and how many gallons are we looking at?
Okay, that's a good question. Let me mention one last thing about gas caps. The VanderCap is a two-piece, completely serviceable mechanism, and we will replace the guts if they fail on you, free. Just let us know. My guts broke. They don't ratchet anymore. It hasn't happened yet, but I'm just telling you, we're happy to uh, put new guts in your cap. You just need to send it in to us so we can take it apart and swap the guts, put it back together, and ship it back to you. Okay,
Can I say one more thing on
uh-huh,
caps?
yeah,
We also have for sale the cheap plastic ones. So if you ever do want to carry a spare, you can order those from us as well.
right. That would actually be very wise. For those of you that have a cap and you think you're good, if it's a drop-in and twist bayonet style cap and you've only got the one and you think you're in the class of people that might experience adhesive failure in the future, go ahead and get a cheap cap from us, an inexpensive backup, because it stinks driving around with no fuel cap. It's number one, not real safe. Number two, not good for the environment. Number three, it's going to throw a check engine light because your system's going to recognize that you don't have a closed loop vapor seal for emissions control. Okay, we ready to move on to oil change?
Yeah.
Is that what we were going to talk about next? Oh, yeah. Reserve.
Right.
Thank you. We had the question about reserve. So the Vanderhall fuel tank, whether Carmel or Venice, it holds 9 gallons of gas. And in my observation, the reserve light comes on under 2 gallons, but before you get to 1 gallon. So on the trip we just finished in Arkansas, we got down to reserve and I still had a gallon and a half left because I was only able to put 7.5 back in the vehicle. So there isn't a separate partition in the tank. The tank is just a box.
Yeah.
And it's just once the float gets below a certain level, then it triggers the ECU or the body control module, one or the other, to trip the light on the gas gauge that comes on red. So don't freak out when your gas gauge goes to red. Most of the time, the reserve level sending unit is pretty close to accurate. And if you've got a gallon and a half of gas left, you can go 50 or 60 miles before you run out of gas. And most people are never more than 50 or 60 miles away from a gas station.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
And you probably also notice it'll come on and off, especially as it's nearing or just getting into that zone. That's just the tank, the float responding to the gas sloshing forward or coming back or responding to a hill, incline or decline.
Right. Okay. Oil changes. The biggest brief oil change is the Carmel and the 2020 and newer Venice. That's because it has the newer 1.5 liter engine. It uses a spin-on canister oil filter that comes on from the bottom. And you have to reach up above the chassis and crow's foot your hand to get to the filter, which means as you come down with the filter, any oil that comes out from that environment is dropping onto the top side of the chassis belly. And we really want to avoid that on those vehicles for several reasons. Number one, everybody likes to move their vehicle and look, everybody should move their vehicle and look where it was parked, and then ask themselves, are there any drips? Is there anything under my vehicle suggesting that I have a leak of any sort? If you're sloppy when you do an oil change, it's going to be maybe as much as a week worth of days where there's a slow drip falling from your vehicle onto the ground, causing you a little paranoia. Is my filter leaking? Did I not do something right? Or did I just induce a whole bunch of oil into my chassis and it's just slowly but surely finally making its way to the ground?
And traveling across,
Yeah. Oil has what's called capillary action. So just if you imagine the capillaries in your body just going off like the branches of a tree, oil does that too. It migrates and migrates and migrates. You could have one square foot piece of glass and do a single drop of motor oil in the middle of it, and over the course of a week, the entire top of that glass panel is going to be oily film because it crawls. So anyway, let's talk about how to do it cleanly. First of all, from a standpoint of what we help people with here at the VanderSpa, if your vehicle is here for oil service and you want us to do it, we will go in and do a circular cutout in your chassis, a clean circular cutout in your chassis that makes it easier to get onto the bottom of the filter and drop it down. Maybe not so much that we're guaranteeing oil won't fall on the chassis, but a majority of the oil can just drop straight down and miss the chassis if you've got a catch pan under it. It's not a structural integrity problem at all. As a matter of fact, we've seen some chassis from Vanderhall where they purposely put a little semicircle in it. The one that we choose to put in it, I think, is deeper and wider so that it's more substantial. But I've seen Vanderhall actually produce chassis that have a little bit of a cutout for that reason. Your oil filter has a rubber seal on the top of it. There is oil sitting in your oil system pressing down on the column of oil that's inside that filter. So when you first start turning the filter loose and that seal breaks, oil is going to pour out down the sides like you just overfilled your glass of milk.
Yep.
And that is the primary thing to keep track of. What we like to do, what I like to do, everybody has different methods, even within VanderSpa technicians. We put a catch can under it, and we will take what I guess would be if the nose of the car is pointing to 12 o'clock, we would take a small Phillips screwdriver and punch a hole in the bottom of the filter at about 7 o'clock, 7 or 8 o'clock, and just let the filter drain into your pan until you've got nothing but a drip coming from that hole in your filter. Then you can get up in there with your wrench, whether it's a bottom of the filter knurled oil filter wrench, or you can actually get the kind of filter wrenches in there that have a handle on them. You just can't swing it very far in order to grab it and have some leverage to turn it loose. But as soon as you've got it loose enough that you feel like, okay, I can probably break the seal by hand, get yourself a 1-quart Ziploc bag and reach it up in there and encapsulate the entire filter with the Ziploc bag, and then continue unscrewing it. Because once it drops down off of the threaded stud that it's screwing up onto, you're going to need to be able to turn it 45 degrees or so in order to be able to pull it out from between the bottom of the engine and the top of the perimeter chassis belly of the machine, because they didn't give us enough room to be able to pull it out upright where anything that's in it could continue to be contained. Yeah. Plus you poked a hole in the bottom of it, so you just need to be containing it that way. And then we throw a paper towel up there to catch any remnant drips that are dropping off of the engine stud while we get prepared to put a new filter on.
Yep, so I just did one today and used those tricks that Troy suggested. And even by doing that, the inside of your bag and sometimes the outside is going to get all oily and you feel like you'll fail. So just know that after doing it 100 times, it's
a messy job no matter what, but at least you can keep it from dousing the chassis.
Yeah. So doing a paper towel dam will stop that capillary action. So I usually put that in place right up against where the radius rod bolt is and just kind of build a dam with that, knowing that it's going to spill. With the cutout, it's much easier because then you can virtually just bring it down straight. And so that's what I recommend. Man, it's worth it for the cars that have it.
And for the people who live on the farm, park in the barn, don't care what their car drips on. I don't care. The bottom of the engine, bottom of the car is supposed to be oily. It's a car. That's what happens. If you've got that mindset, keep in mind that if you saturate that area, that oil is going to migrate into and around the polyurethane bushing on the passenger side of the car that the sway bar pivots back and forth in. And motor oil is not always friendly to rubbers and polyurethanes, and
Especially when there's grit in there.
yeah. So it's we don't want those. We want them to be greasy with silicone-based grease. We don't want them to be oily with motor oil.
One other tip before we leave that, Troy mentioned using a Phillips screwdriver and poking a hole. The bottom dome is going to cause that oil to travel away from the catch pan and pretty much onto the chassis. There's a cool little airplane trick that I'll pass along is get a piece of a hanger or welding rod and just put it inside that little hole, and then that oil will just travel directly to wherever that stick lands. And so it looks a little funny, but you poke a hole in there, stick your hanger in there, stick your hanger in your drip pan, and it will drain that entire contents of that filter right down to where you direct
Yeah,
it.
because once it gets down to the point where there's not the pressure of liquid pressing down on it, it'll start running down the chin of the filter and it'll go to the lowest point, and then it'll be dripping on your chassis all over again.
Yeah. So just a little tip there.
So you can do it on ramps. We definitely recommend ramps. I would do ramps before I would do a jack and jack stands. Jack stands, unless you have rubber-footed jack stands, the belly of these vehicles are powder coated. The powder coating is not real strong, and most jack stands have pretty jagged edges on them because they're cup shaped to try to support suspension members or something. Don't just put the raw end of a jack stand under the belly of these things because there's no grip. It could slip, it could slide, and it's not nearly as heavy as a car, but it's still certainly heavy enough to hurt a person. And you've only got 5 inches of ground clearance if there's nothing else holding the car up but you.
And the traction of one wheel in the back, and
right.
And if you're sliding yourself in and out, you could probably move the car.
Yeah. And that's the other thing. Don't grab the car and use it to help yourself shift around underneath it, because that's precarious as well.
Okay. Another live question from Newman. He says, this is a circumstance. 2019 Venice with 25,000 miles, BNR tune. When lightly on the throttle, stop and go traffic, and pulling away from a light, I get a hard shift from first to second. I think what he's saying is if he's harder on the throttle, the shift is more smooth. He says, is that anything to be concerned about?
So if he's taking off gently, he's got a hard shift, but if he takes off with more gas pedal, it shifts more normally.
That's what I'm hearing. Is that right?
Okay.
Newman,
well, first of all, Newman, thank you very much for putting 25,000 miles on your Venice.
He says yes. Nice work.
We applaud you for actually driving the machine. I am not a General Motors hydraulic transmission torque converter technician knowledgeable person, first off. But things that don't shift right usually indicate might be time to just go ahead and service the transmission. Yours has been around long enough, even though it doesn't have 30 or 40,000 miles on it. The fluid's old enough. You've had enough heat cycles. I would do a drain and refill on the transmission if you feel comfortable doing that. If not, take it to a place that does transmission services and just tell them that you have a 2017 or 2016 Chevy Cruze 1.4 liter with a 6-speed automatic transmission, and you need a drain and refill service, and they should know how to do it. It's not rocket science. They can get to the top of the engine or the top of the transmission where there's a little rubber plug that is used to put the replacement fluid in, and I'm pretty certain that both on the first gen Venice and on the 1.5 liter engines of the second gen Venice and the Carmel, there's also kind of a sight glass plug up high in the side of the transmission that is where transmission fluid would start to weep out once refilling has reached to the prescribed level. But that also has to be done when the transmission's at a specific operating temperature. So you could go to YouTube and you could look for transmission service processes for a 2016 Chevy Cruze or 2017 Chevy Malibu with the 1.5 liter turbo for those of you that want to do transmission service on your 1.5 liter. I would think that low transmission fluid could be a reason that you're getting a hard shift with lower pressure, because when the pressures are higher, when your RPMs are higher, transmission pressure raises, and maybe that allows the bands in the transmission to work more elegantly instead of taking a gulp of air and slipping into second gear and hitting hard. But that's just a little bit of conjecture on my part. Last thing I want to mention about transmissions is you are driving a vehicle that weighs less than half the weight of the vehicle that transmission was engineered to push around. It doesn't even know you're in the car. It doesn't even know the car's going uphill when you're going uphill because it's not working. So whatever the General Motors recommended transmission service interval would be for those transmissions, I would say you can go that long. And you know, the whole world says don't go as long as they tell you. You should do it before then. That's always good advice. It never hurts to do it early, but you certainly don't need to do it half. You know, if they're suggesting doing it at 30,000 miles, you don't need to do it at 15 or your car's going to break, because we're not working these cars hard. The transmissions are not laboring to push us around.
Okay, great. Thanks for the reply. Flawless miles on the spa treatment on a Speedster number 19.
Here's another transmission question.
Okay.
Bump shifting delay in manual mode of a 23 Venice with a VNR tune. Is there anything that can be done to reduce that delay?
So I've heard a couple of different things, and I haven't gone back to try to find it in writing on B&R's site. I've heard people say that B&R claims that you'll have faster shifting with their tune. I'm concerned that maybe they're misinterpreting a different RPM point in time that the transmission shifts compared to how long does it take to shift after you've asked it to shift in manual mode. The 1.5 liter platform, whether Venice or Carmel, neither one of them shifts nearly as snappy in manual mode compared to the first generation Venice. Different engine, different transmission, different behavior. Malibu is more of a luxury car. The Cruise was a compact car that was a little bit sporty, but the 1.4 liter with the Cruise platform transmission is just a sportier drive, sportier shifting. Now, for those of you that have Bad News Racing performance tunes, if you're the original owner, if you're the one that made the investment in the tune and the programmer, you are entitled to send an email to Bad News Racing at customersupport@badnewsracing.net, and they will respond to a request to change your shift speed. And I don't know how many different increments of delayed to ridiculously responsive they are able to dial up, because I have not yet asked them to do that for my Carmel, but I intend to, because even my Carmel doesn't shift as snappy as I would like. And I've been told by the owner of Bad News Racing that they can facilitate a change in the transmission programming to decrease that delay.
Okay. Dan, let's move on to your question. You think it's a silly question. It's actually not. Is there any reason not to drive a Venice, and we'll add Carmel here as well, with the top hood off, such as for a test run? The answer is no. We do it all the time. In fact, that saves us troubleshooting when we're working on our own cars or customer cars. There's a couple of things to be aware of. On a Venice, this isn't as much of an issue because most of your fasteners are capture kept. And so you're not going to see fasteners flying off or foam blocks. Whereas on the Carmel, I have heard a few, I've seen those little square 1-inch blocks come flying off. I've found them in the driveway. I found them on the road after I returned from a trip. There's also an issue of, I'll call it the outer hood mounting ears, especially one on the driver's side. If someone's been ham-fisted, then it's easy to crack that. And I've had those ears depart with a tinkling sound underneath the car, and come back to find out that the ear is actually broken off. So when you do drive it with the hood off, probably the biggest concern is putting the hood back on and securing it. We've heard of at least one and maybe two situations where the car's been driven with the hood off. Then they put the hood back on, got interrupted, Forgot to
Forgot to put their
forgot to
fasteners
put
in
the
it.
fasteners back on. It's particularly damaging in likely in a
Venice.
Venice where
Yeah.
there's no outer hood or the inner hood to hold it in place, and those hoods will just
Yeah, they
you know
take off like
take
a
off
plane
like
and
they
flip upside down and slide down the road.
yeah. So that make sure you do put the fasteners back in if you're going to drive it without the hood.
Yeah. So the other thing I would mention is the typically silver in color U-nuts that Vanderhall uses that clip onto a surface and then have a pass-through hole for you to put the screw in. That's the kind of fastener, the kind of nut that's used on first and second gen Venice. First gen Venice has thicker tabs for those nuts to slide onto, so they do a pretty good job of staying captive. But those of you that have a 20 or newer Venice, you have thin sheet metal tabs that have been riveted to the chassis, and they're not thick enough for those U-nuts to want to stay on. So if you're going to take a test drive with your hood off, go around and collect all your U-nuts ahead of time and put them in a safe place so that you're not missing half of them when you get back, because they will absolutely just fly off because they're made for, I don't know, 1/4 to 3/16,
That's
or
right.
yeah, 1/4 to 3/8 panel thickness kind of uh, engagement, and they're slid on to something that's 1.5 mm thick, and they just don't stay.
Yeah. You can actually crush those if you you can pinch those to get a little bit better grip if you want with a pair of vice grips or something like that. They're pretty good spring steel. Uh, Another thing is the rivets that are holding that L bracket on. We've seen some failures there
On the 20 and newer Venice.
on the 20 newer Venice. So when you've got the hood off, take a look at those rivets. I think they're just, cheap pop rivets. You can put some Cherry Max rivets.
Yeah, you can
or-
either re-rivet them or you can simply drill out whatever's left and then take a small appropriate diameter sheet metal screw and just drive it right
Right.
down in to clamp the tab back down into the
Yeah.
chassis so they don't disappear.
We've seen some good solutions on the Facebook page with some aftermarket over center pop centers. I think that's a pretty elegant solution as well. One more thing I'll say in the Carmel, if you're going to drive with the hood off, you're going to lose your mirrors and you're going to lose your windshield.
Yeah.
So beware of that. Use eyeglass protection. If you do decide to put your windshield back on, uh, be aware that the body is actually taking up space on the mounts. And if you just screw that thing back on, you're going to bow your windshield up to 1/4 of an inch, and you
Yeah.
might find yourself in
You'll-
need of a windshield.
You'll
So,
put some static, you'll put some additional curvature into the glass of the windshield because you're narrowing the machine that you're screwing your Carmel windshield to.
yep.
So just be real careful that if you feel it's necessary to drive it, what you really need to do is if you're going to test drive it with no windshield, you need to have a helmet on that's got face protection or goggles, because flying debris at 50 miles an hour is no joke.
Yeah. So, okay, super cool. Let's see. Oh, wow, we got a lot more questions here.
Good.
Let's see. 21 Carmel. Any problems with going from auto to manual while cruising and back again to automatic?
No, it doesn't hurt it at all. If you're driving along in fifth gear and you drop your gear selector down into manual, the car's going to jump into third. Whenever you go into manual from drive in a 20 or newer Vanderhall with the 1.5 liter, it's going to drop down 2 gears, in my experience. If anybody else has a different experience than that, feel free to put it in the chat because we'd love to hear. But sometimes you're thinking, well, I just wanted to downshift 1 gear. I'm going to go into manual because I want to downshift once, and then I drop it into manual and it downshifts twice, and then I'm running high RPM, and I'm like, well, I didn't really need second. Third would have been nice. So that behavior is to be expected, expected and normal. And conversely, you can just lift it back up into drive easily, and then it'll go ahead and upshift. Another thing that I think you'll find, I don't know if we have first gen Venice and second gen Venice / Carmel people, but the transmission behaves differently between those two platforms when it's in manual mode. If I'm in a first gen Venice and I put it in manual mode and I slow down to a stop sign, When I take off from that stop sign, I'm going to be bouncing off the rev limiter if I don't give it permission to go into second gear. If you're in manual mode in a 1.5 liter based Vanderhall, it's going to upshift its way all the way up to fourth gear without you giving it permission to, and it's going to hold in fourth. It won't go into fifth or sixth until you purposefully upshift. Now, anywhere along the way that you tell it to downshift, it'll go ahead and downshift, and then it'll hold in that gear until you give it permission to upshift. But if you're starting from a stop in manual mode, it's going to auto upshift up to fourth, and you're going to ask yourself, why is it doing that? I've got it in manual. It shouldn't be upshifting unless I give it permission. And just know that that's normal.
All right, so we're going to go backwards because Mr. Brown, you've asked this question twice. We didn't miss it, but we're going to cover it now. Do you know any service centers in New York area, Troy?
No, the Northeast is unfortunately miserably underserved with technical people. As Steve alluded to before, we are slowly but surely, I should say I'm the one doing most of the phone calls these days. I'm talking to owners about what are they getting worked on, what the project is that they need. Owners call me frequently and say, Troy, listen, I've got a great mechanic. He really knows what he's doing. He actually enjoys working on my car, and he says that he'd be happy to work on others. And as a matter of fact, he's curious what he would need to do to become like VanderSpa certified so that he can be aligned with us and work on these vehicles and have us for support, because we do that for people. If you're looking for an independent, if you're looking for someone to work on your car and you don't have a dealer anywhere around, then the profile of the people you're looking for are going to be the independent auto shop owners that are ma and pa or second generation. They are the people who work on MG, Triumph, Jaguar, Land Rover, I don't know what else. The
Even
unique,
some exotics.
unique,
Yeah.
low production, hard to support British cars, Lotus dealers. Innokinetic is big in the Lotus world. That's actually their primary bread and butter. They are not afraid to work on anything. You bring them something that works with gasoline and has wheels and hinges and brakes and stuff, and they're like, I can figure it out. And they're not afraid of it. If you go to a Midas muffler shop, they're going to laugh you out of the county. You just can't go to a corporate place, because if they can't find it in their book of year, model, and manufacturer, they don't want to touch it from a liability standpoint. So find yourself an independent. And then if you're happy with what that independent did for you, then ask them if they would be willing to be a resource for other people in your area. I know a lot of you, when I talk to you on the phone, you're quick to say, my gosh, I'm the only one in my city. I've never seen another one. Well, that's great. You still need to have that one-on-one relationship with somebody. But if they would be open to it, we'd like to know about them, because they may be only one state removed from somebody else who needs help. And they'd lots rather go one state over than 5 states down to us. We'll take cars from anywhere. We've had them, not every state in the union, but we've had Northern California. We've had Ohio. I think we've had one from Maine or Connecticut. They put them on a truck and send them to us.
Virginia, Florida.
Yeah. So
Tennessee.
And let me mention that real quick. We got about 5 minutes. On average, you're going to be just budget $1,500 each way if you want to send your machine to the VanderSpa to get it worked on. We are in the dead middle of the country. We're not in the dead middle of north to south, but we pretty much are east to west. And if you just draw a rainbow across the top of our state, everybody's in a reasonably similar distance. So $1,200 to $1,600 each way is what you're going to pay a transporter. And with the fuel costs right now, it may have actually gone up a little bit. But if you're going to send it to us, please go to our website. Go to vanderspa.com. Get familiar with all of the things that we have for your platform that you might want to consider having us do while we have it. Because the further you can stretch that transport money with respect to maybe not ever having to do that again, that is wisdom in action. If you will invest your transport money wisely and go ahead and do the other things that you tell yourself, oh, well, I really shouldn't do that now. I need to wait for 6 months or a year. Money's not going to be any cheaper 6 months or a year from now.
So I told you earlier that I'm a pilot. I also have an airplane. I'm also a certified aviation mechanic. And I've just toyed with the idea, and I'll just toss it out here to this group since you're asking, of doing a mobile VanderSpa on location day. So if you're interested in that or have a group of cars or want to do something like that, just
What
shoot me.
Steve is suggesting is we would fly to you.
Yeah. So I'm always up for a mission, and if it happens to coincide with some Vanderhall owners, all the better. So
If we have 3 or 4 machines to work on,
we might be able to arrange
Then-
a special visit. That
we
would be
can-
kind of fun.
fly in, bring the tools, bring the equipment, or drop ship the equipment and take care of you on site.
And if you've got someone who you can borrow a lift from, that would be all the better because I don't like bending over,
Yeah,
honestly.
we're pretty spoiled to being Homo sapiens when we work on your Vanderhall these days.
All right, super cool. Should we take a couple more?
Sure.
All right, so
Oh, go ahead.
There's a couple specifically under the Q&A menu. I see you've been looking in the chat. for a while.
yes, I've been looking at the chat. Q&A menu.
Damon Brown in there twice, so we got him. But
Hey, Damon.
there's 2 in there, and it's specifically, why is the check engine light always coming on and off? When I check the code, it is evap.
Okay.
So,
All right. You have either a faulty gas cap or you have a small pinhole leak somewhere in your fuel tank and vapor recovery and vapor recirculation system. You're going to have to find somebody who knows how to troubleshoot that stuff. Typically, they're going to need to have a smoke kit so that they can inject smoke into the airspace that's in the gas tank and put pressure behind it and try to find where on the vehicle smoke is leaking out, because it's just indicative that you have a pressurized air system in there trying to keep those vapors pushed back into the engine so they get burned along with the air fuel mixture instead of floating up into the atmosphere, which is why you can't drive around with your gas cap off, by the way, without your check engine light coming on, because the vapors from the gas tank are going up and destroying the ozone. So even a pinhole leak is going to come up as an issue. Now, rubbers expand and contract with temperature. As you're driving the vehicle and the rubbers heat up, the holes get bigger. When it's colder, the holes are smaller. So the way check engine light logic works, I'm going to speak really 30,000 foot view here because I'm bordering on understanding the principle, but maybe not the letter of the law. I think it's 3 drive cycles, typically with General Motors, that an issue needs to be seen by the computer before it throws the check engine light. And similarly, there's going to be 3 drive cycles of it not seeing that same problem before the light goes back off, because it might have just been a nuisance situation that, or an issue that healed itself, whatever that might have been. But check engine lights don't come on just because they saw a problem one time. They have to have seen that problem several drive cycles, which means you drove the car, you turned it off, you walked away and went to bed, or went into a meeting for 2 hours and came back out and started the car again. That's the second drive cycle. Multiple drive cycles with the same problem have to occur before that light comes on.
That's always good to know when you're troubleshooting an issue, as well as if you think you've fixed it and the check engine light doesn't go off, or if you've turned it off and it comes back on, you want to actually intentionally do some short drive cycles to see if it will recur. On the evap, I think I heard what you were listening or talking about. I'd take one other angle or one other shot at that one. If you've overfilled your tank a number of times, your evap canister might have actually taken on liquid fuel. And I've pulled out a number of these that have had vent line blockages. They've overfilled, and then it drains right into the evap canister, and it weighs about 2 pounds heavy. That's enough fluid that it's never going to clear. And
it won't let vapors go through.
Yeah, it won't let vapors go through. So that could actually be happening. And evap canister replacement might need to be on your short list.
Yeah, we've talked about that. Let's touch on that real fast. I think I can do it in 45 seconds to a minute. Late model Vanderhalls, especially Carmels, have been showing up with a pinched vent line on top of the fuel tank. It's up in that gap that you can barely see up in there above your swing arm in the back. It's super hard to get to unless you got skinny arms and some patience. That line gets a kink in it because it's already bent 180 degrees to go out the front of the fuel pump and then come back to the charcoal canister. And if that line gets pinched, then as the fuel level rises in your tank when you're pumping gas into it, there's no place for the fuel to go, and there's no place for the air to go. That's being displaced by the fuel level rising in the tank. The inlet, I'll draw it right here. If this is your fuel tank, on the side, your fuel inlet comes in kind of low, maybe not quite that low. If this is the top of the tank and that's the bottom of the tank, as soon as the fuel level gets above this place for gas to come in and air to go out, now it's trying to compress this airspace right here. And if the vent tube at the top is coming out and that line's got a pinch in it, then it starts pushing fuel back up the filler neck. Well, if you start overfilling the filler neck, then there's a bleeder tube coming off that runs down to your charcoal canister, and you start force feeding liquid fuel into your charcoal canister, and it's just a problem because now it doesn't want to run right, and it looks like it only holds a third tank of gas.
How's he doing? 45 seconds, folks? All right, so I'm going to give you a quick mechanics view into checking that. So if you look right here, I'm just going to drop this for a second. If you look over the top of your battery, so on the driver's side of the car, get down low enough with a very powerful flashlight, and you'll be able to see the top of the fuel tank if you look between the positive and negative battery posts, straight back about 18 inches. The vent line is a 1/2 inch line that is a black line connecting to a white connector, which is the top of the fuel pump. And what you're looking for is that as it makes that U-turn, if it's angled slightly up, you're at high risk of seeing that kink. If you actually see that tube increase or elongate in diameter, especially when it's angled up, that's your kink that's actually starting to form or has formed. I have seen many cars that have that angled down. So if it goes from horizontal, if the exit is just slightly down, maybe 5 degrees or less, almost always that indicates a good, healthy system. But a lot of times when it's angled up slightly, they both aim toward the firewall or the back bulkhead.
In the back of the cockpit.
Back of the cockpit. If it's angled up and it's wide, chances are you've got a partial or even a full blockage. In that case, if it's not giving you symptoms, you can probably live with it, but make sure that no matter what you're driving, no matter what configuration it is, just stop at the first click. Stop at that 3/4. You can go back and watch our refilling video. Okay, we had one more question, and let's take should I drain my oil hot while the engine's hot? And my recommendation from the aviation background is that's when the moisture is still in the oil. And if you want to, especially if you're going to store the car for a long period of time, that's the best time to drain it because you're getting all that hot oil, which is still got a lot of water vapor in it, out of the engine, and that will prevent rust for long-term corrosion. Go ahead.
Another thing for turbocharged vehicles is if the oil is cold, the oil is not going to flow and it's not going to clear out of your turbo. So you want to have at least a little bit of heat in your turbo before you do your oil change. But don't, if you're starting from cold, don't make it boiling hot before you get your hands all over it.
Yeah. Just a few minutes of running will be the best. So yeah, that's a really good idea is to do it while it's hot.
Warm is good, hot is not necessary, especially on the second gen machines. They are using a factory fill of 0.20 motor oil, which is basically the viscosity of water. So it's less important, in my opinion, to have it hot in order to get it all to come out or to get it to flow well because it's so thin to begin with.
Yeah. All right. So I saw one of the questions that says, where can you get these cool shirts? Noted. We've got some Vander swag out there, as you know. So if there's demand for some shirts, hit us up. Just send us a message and tell us what color, what kind of style shirt you want, and we'll see if there's enough demand. We can put some things together. So that said, Troy, anything as we close out tonight?
Oh, I don't think so. Please recognize that you can go to our website to do special orders. You can go to our website to send us inquiries. You can email us at info@vanderspa.com. You can email me at troy@vanderspa.com. We've had an interesting rash of people in the last week just seem panicked about not knowing how to get a hold of us. And goodness, there's a lot of different ways to get a hold of us.
Facebook is always a good one.
Facebook is good. Facebook Messenger. We have the VanderSpa Facebook page. We have the VanderSpa group page. We have my personal page on Facebook for those of you that are friends with me personally. We take and accept communication from all different avenues. If you could try to restrict your Vanderhall related communication to VanderSpa Messenger, that would be would make our life easier because it'd be just one less place we're having to hunt for which way did they contact me, because it gets a little confusing when you've got messages coming in from 6 different channels throughout the day and trying to remember in what way did they communicate with me versus this other person.
Okay, super cool. Thanks so much for joining us. Tell your friends, but drive a Vanderhall, and we love serving you. We love this little niche of a brand. We drive them ourselves and we enjoy them. So glad to have you along.
Oh, and next webinar next month. Are we 3rd Tuesday of next month? 4th Tuesday. 4th Tuesday of next month. 23rd, same Vander time, same Vander channel.
Just an FYI, we are actually shutting down for a couple of days or for a couple of weeks, or going into minimal staffing mode. Troy and I are taking a little bit of a break, and so there may be some delay in response, but just know that we'll be back on channel about what? A little bit like the 3rd week in June.
Yeah, the 3rd full week in June we should be back, but we'll be, of course, buried under all the stuff we missed not all the stuff, some of the stuff we missed while we were gone. So we'll get back to you as soon as we can. Email is the greatest. That's really the easiest thing to organize around. So if you can try to let your communication be that way. Oh, let me go ahead and I'll mention it. I don't know that writing it down helps now. Next time we'll have it all on here for the whole duration. 903-626-8772 is our automated attendant, artificial intelligence, Jessica, telephone answering helper. And she can carry on a pretty good conversation with you. So tell her what you need, tell her when's a good time to reach you, tell her what the best number is to call back, let her know what it is you're concerned about, and all of that comes to us in an emailed transcript. So we actually have some context for what's the urgency of your call. Sometimes if you call 3 times in a row and you never leave a message, for all we know, you're stuck on the side of the road, and we'll try to drop everything we're doing to make a call just to find out, oh, I figured it out. So put it in writing and help us out just a little bit.
All right.
Thank you
so much. See you later.
Keep the sticky side stuck.